Sometimes it's a surprise, but
it's more.
Number two, that is one. I saw this. You stopped saying it. I tried to bring it. Oh, this is me. Talked about.
刚才说的那个撞钟。
ああ、綺麗ね。金箔で。
Segundo.
Japanese culture is based on the cities. This one.
Come on, honey,
Hello there, Eric here, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about culture, namely cultural differences between nationalities, but this can also be applied to culture within corporations, culture in leadership, and culture just in between groups of people. And I live in Japan, I'm American, so I'm going to be incorporating my experiences between these two cultures, and I'm going to be using Gert Hofstede's cultural dimensions. If you don't know about those, Gert Hofstede developed these cultural dimensions as a way to measure different values and customs and importances between cultures. And he did most of this important work working at the IBM Research Labs between 1967 and 1973, where he used these 5 cultural dimensions to compare 70 countries around the world. And today we're going to be looking at Japan and the United States. So the first dimension is power distance. And this is the degree of inequality. But even more than that, it's the degree in which societies, a group of people, will tolerate big gaps in power. In organizations, you might see this more as a vertical and less a flat organization. So some of the values you might see in there, a higher power distance score might be a more centralized structure. The hierarchy is more vertical and stronger. There might be some gaps, large gaps in compensation between groups and individuals, and also gaps between authority and respect shown to certain individuals within that group. And the lower power distance score means a more flatter organization, a more flat society. Supervisor employees are considered more as equals. They might get even more equal pay. And as we go through this, higher scores and lower scores aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just a ranking to show a difference between two cultures. So keep that in mind. So a high power distance score doesn't mean that the organization or country is better in any way. So thinking about power distance, the extent to which a society lets gaps or vertical types organization rather than a flat one, which one do you think scores higher as far as power distance goes, as far as the United States and Japan? I'll give you 1 second to think about that. And a lower score, again, means that the group is considered more, and it's more flat, a flatter organization. In actuality, United States and Japan are quite similar in this regard. If, for an example of its organization having a very power distance driven type organization, you can think about the military. A very flat one might be a more democratic type situation. And both the United States and Japan are very democratic as now. So there isn't a whole lot of difference between them as far as power distance is concerned. And both of these countries rank somewhere in the middles, in the 70 countries in this decade-long study. The next one is individualism versus collectivism. So this is the strength, the bonds that tie people together in the community. Do people put the individual first, yourself first, or do they put the group first? And this is sometimes the score is commonly looked at as a higher individuality ranking or a higher collectivism ranking. So in this context, the higher score meaning more value is placed on the individual's time, the individual's freedom, the respect for the individual's privacy, and the lower score is higher collectivism. So there's more emphasis and more value put on your contribution to a group, and therefore you might find an emphasis on building your skill, becoming a master at something, because perhaps that you may be more useful to a group if you were skilled at one thing, and you might be better off as an individual if you value those being kind of a jack of all trades. So again, higher score, individualistic, lower score, more collectivistic. Which one do you think? I think this one's probably pretty easy because for these two countries, these are drastically different. And if you guessed the United States being higher score here, you are correct. Actually, the United States is the number one in the world as scoring as far as being individualistic. And Japan thinks more about the group. There's more societal pressures to be part of the group, and this all comes with the type of society built around in your upbringing to be to fit in to the group. There's more of an in-group, out-group structure in Japan as well. One way I like to illustrate this is two very well-known sayings. One in Japan, "Deru togi wa utareru," and "the squeaky wheel gets the grease." The first saying translates basically into "the nail that sticks out gets hammered down." Basically, if you want to survive, keep your head down. Don't make yourself known. Be a part of the group. Fit in, basically, is what that saying says. If you make yourself too loud, stick yourself out too much, you're going to get run over, as it were. And in contrast to that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you complain, if you say something, if you make something known, and if you're loud enough in the States, you might just get what you want or get what you need. Next one, uncertainty avoidance. This is the degree in which society is comfortable without having a strict plan of what's going to happen in the near future, or without knowing exactly what's going to happen, or going into unknown situations, without being able to play it by ear, as it were, or being comfortable with playing it by ear, not needing a fixed plan or a fixed contingency plan, as it were. So a higher UAI in this score would be more formal. You need more rules, you need more policies, and you need to adhere to a strict structure, and you want to avoid differences. And a lower UAI is a little more informal. You're more accepting to risk. You're more accepting to not going into something without necessarily knowing the outcome, or not even maybe knowing how you'll get through it entirely, step by step. So again, what do you think? The higher score, meaning you accept ambiguity, and the lower score, meaning you don't. I'm sorry, it's the opposite. If you want to avoid uncertainty, that's the higher score here, and that is Japan, and one of the highest scores in the world, actually. One of the reasons I attribute this is Japan has some of the highest rates of natural disasters in the world. So it's been a big part of the culture to be prepared for whatever might go wrong. And there's constant large-scale public drills. Everything is planned out into great detail for almost everything. And it's very uncomfortable in Japanese society to even have a large budget in organizations without going over every detail very minutely. And on the traverse side, the United States is fairly low on this scale. Very easygoing as far as that's concerned. You don't need to consider all the contingencies. It's okay to take a little risk on and see what happens, kind of thing. Play it by ear. Next one is masculinity, and this is the degree of society and values that places a high emphasis on the traditional male and female roles. So a higher masculinity score means men are masculine and women are feminine. In this, again, this is more traditional sense of those words. The distinction of what males are to do in society and the roles in which females fit into society are well established, and there isn't a lot of deviation from that. And the lower scores, it's more of an equal playing field. Women are in more positions of leadership and power. Successful women are more admired and respected. And not only that, women are drawn to these things a little bit more than in a higher masculine society. Higher masculine society, women are more comfortable might feel more comfortable in the traditional roles. So this one might be a little bit easier. Higher score, high masculinity. Lower score, a little more of a ambiguity between the sexes. So if you said Japan is high, you are correct. Japan is also one of the highest in the world in this ranking. I believe they're either one or two. And just as an example of that, in the top 50 corporations, largest corporations in Japan, there was only one or two female board members. That's in all of the top 50 organizations in Japan. And I believe that company is Sony, and that woman is actually a foreigner, not Japanese. And in the States, it's a little more equal as far as that's concerned. Women are going for more leadership roles, and we see a little bit more house husbands and things like that in the States. Next is long-term orientation. So this is a short-term view or a long-term view. Which one is more important to focus on? If you're a higher long-term oriented type society, you're going to put more emphasis on things that will pan out in the long run, things that are better in the long run. That usually comes down to importance on things like education, training, infrastructure, family, and also a stronger work ethic, because you don't need necessarily see rewards for what you're doing right away. And on a lower score in this sense would mean the little more creativity and individualism, and more looking at short-term goals, more short-term uh, rewards from what you're getting at. And thinking about Japan and the United States again, which one do you think is more long-term orientated? Again, Japan and the United States differ for this very greatly. Japan, just as an example here, the average savings of the average person in Japan is one of the top in the world. Average Japanese person will have a large amount of money in their savings account in the bank. And I believe in the United States, the average is negative. The average American does not have any savings. The average American has quite a bit of debt. So that's just one thing, looking in the long term. Also, Americans are a little more concerned with the quarterly report, a little more concerned with the election cycle, and Japan's a little more concerned with what's going to happen in the long run. It might be also connected to the age of these two societies as well. I said in the beginning, there's actually 5 dimensions, but there was a 6th added since I last looked at this 3 or 4 years ago, and that is the idea of indulgence. And this is a 6th dimension, fairly new, and it's the extent to which people in a society, people within that society, control people to curb their own impulses and desires. So a higher indulgence, a higher score in this sense, would be that you're free to enjoy life. Society doesn't restrain you in any way. You can look for instant gratifications. There are looser social norms on you going after what you want to do. And a lower score in here would be a higher level of constraint. You're self-constrained. Society is telling you to self-constrained. You want to curb your gratification, and the social norms are a bit more strict. So higher indulgence, lower score, meaning restraint. So what do you think now? If you said the United States is more likely to indulge, you are correct. Japan is a little more likely to curb yourself or shut yourself off, or because there's an idea of saving face a lot more in Japan. You don't want to look like you're taking out, it goes with the group analysis that I put earlier. You don't want to stick out. You don't want to look like you're having too much fun, because we're all supposed to be, in it together kind of idea. And to illustrate this, we got the now generation. This is going along with the technology these days. We need instant gratification in the States, and we want it now, and we want it right away. Moving more and more towards this as we move along, being able to, for example, fast food and order things and receive them next day on the internet. On the other side of things, there's this phrase, or a concept, more of a concept really, and that is gaman suru. Suru is do, gaman translates as patience, but it's more than that. It's willful patience. It's holding yourself back on purpose for the good of either the long term or the good of the group. It's self-restraint in a way. And this term is widely used all over Japan. It's very hard to be translated into English, and I think it kind of exemplifies this idea of a less indulgent society here in Japan. And just to compare these once again, power distance, United States, a little bit lower. Individualism, United States, top number 1, America number 1. Masculinity, Japan number 1 in the world. Uncertainty avoidance, big gap there between the two cultures. Short-term versus long-term, huge gap between these two societies. Indulgence and restraint. Also, not so big, but a little bit of difference there too. And one thing to start thinking about is how this might affect how you do business in these two countries, how these organizations will be built in these two countries. If you want to discuss that further, I invite you to look in the description and watch for further videos. All right, again, this is Eric Hawkinson talking about cultural dimensions, and I'll see you next time.
Hello there. This is the almost completed makeover of our Japanese car. With no fish yet. Coming soon.